So today we will be starting with the topic called methodologies. This is the most important topic if I talk about processes of testing a software or creating a complete software. Methodology plays very important role. It refers to a structured process involved when working on a project. It's a strategy for setting a set of norms between a group of people that say, this is how you're going to work and this is how you're going to pass information from one phase to other phase. What is it? So methodology means that how you will carry out the process of SDLC. You all are aware with SDLC that we do have some phases in SDLC. But then how to carry forward these phases, whether we are working on two phases parallelly, simultaneously, or we will be working on the phases one by one. This is what methodology is. That means how you will proceed with SDLC. It is just a set of norms between group of people that say how you're going to work. And this is how you're going to pass information from one phase to other phase. Phase, I'm talking about SDLC phase. So for example, first is requirement gathering. After requirement gathering, we go for analysis phase, then design phase, then development, then testing, and then deployment. So during this phase, how we will be proceeding? Are we going in a linear sequential way? Or we are doing it simultaneously, for example, testing and development simultaneously or in a sequence. This all are defined by a methodology. So there are different ways, and that's why there are different methodologies we have. So I'll be proceeding with some popular methodologies in the market. One is called Waterfall model. Then we have VV model, and last we have Agile methodology. First, I will be starting with this Waterfall model. The waterfall model is the earliest SDLC approach that was used for software development. The waterfall model is a linear, sequential approach where requirements are gathered at the beginning of the project. So it is typical SDLC. So imagine SDLC. We have this thing, requirement analysis, design, coding, testing, maintenance. So typical SDLC is there. That means requirements are gathered at the beginning, and then the design will take place, then the coding will take place, that is development, then testing, and then deployment and maintenance phases there. It is divided into phases, and the output of one phase becomes the input of the next phase. You already know entry criteria, exit criteria. So exit criteria, for example, exit criteria of this phase can become the entry criteria of this phase, and so on. So output of this phase we can use as an input of next phase. So in simple words, my current phase is totally dependent on the previous phase. So you cannot just jump to this, or you cannot directly work on this, or maybe parallelly on this and this. No, because you need this phase to be completed if you want to get started with this phase. So that is what it is said, that it is divided into phase, and it is mandatory for phase to be completed before the next phase starts. In short, there is no overlapping in waterfall model. So you cannot overlap two phases in this case. The product is validated at the end. So accommodating changes of requirement is super difficult. This is quite important. The product is validated. What is validation? Validation means testing, right? The product is validated at the end. If you see, testing is placed as a second last phase. Because testing is done at the end, I'll say, it is so difficult to accommodate the changes. Let's say now if client is saying, I want to change the requirement. We already reached to till this phase and I cannot go back, because this is one phase after other, and then other, then other, then other. If I'm reaching here, product is getting validated here. And now if client is saying, please accommodate the changes, it's not possible. This line I like the most. It is written as water falls from top to bottom. It also strictly follows all the phases from top to bottom. So it is just like waterfall. Look at this. That's why this picture is very good to explain waterfall methodology. Like how water falls from top to bottom. Same way we will be proceeding with all the phases from top to bottom. You cannot reverse water, right? So it's just like I cannot, when I'm performing testing, I cannot go back to developer. I have to go through this phase again. So I have to go to check-in maintenance, go to requirements, design, then coding. So this is, again, we have to follow it like a waterfall, and you cannot perform two phases simultaneously. So typically we understood that, whenever one module is created in development, we should start with the testing, right? But there is a problem here. In waterfall, it's not possible. In waterfall, it needs to be completed first, and then we initiate with testing. So for smaller projects, the waterfall model works well because it's a small project. You need not to work most in it. And if, let's say, it is coded also, tested also, still you found some defects, it's easy to handle. It cannot adopt the changes in requirements. So of course, because you already started, it's already coded, everything is already done. Now if client is saying I want to change requirement, it's just like starting a new project. So we cannot accommodate any change of requirement. It's difficult. So it's just like you're starting a new project, so timeline will increase by double. So this was the shortcoming. It becomes very difficult to move back to the phase. For example, if application has now moved to testing stage and there is a change in requirement, it becomes difficult to go back and change it. And this is the major disadvantage of waterfall methodologies. If I have to, list whatever the, shortcomings of this waterfall methodology is, I'll say, first of all, it's very time consuming. Change of requirement is super difficult. Next is, if it's a small project, good to go. But if it's big project, you will be only going back and forth, because it's too much of processes in it. But good thing about waterfall methodology is documentation. It's heavily documented. So let's say if I found any defect, I'll go to every phase. It is documented everywhere. So documentation is really good in this. But if you say fast, or maybe it's simultaneous, no, it's not. So these were some biggest disadvantages, that it was taking time, change of requirement was difficult, and most important point is validation was done at the end. Let's say everything is coded, it's already developed, and now if I'm checking it, if I found defect also, it's taking a lot of our time, because we have to do it again and then again and then again. So there was a lot of problems with waterfall methodology. But then, teams sat together, some testers, some developers, they all sat together and they said, we have to come up with some solution of this. So they came up with next model, that is called VV model. The V model is an SDLC model where the execution of process happens in a sequential manner in a V shape. It is also known as verification and validation model. So I want you to understand what is verification and validation. We already did it. Verification is static testing. Validation is dynamic testing. So they started with this model called V model. They call it VV. The first V stands for verification. Second V stands for validation model. V model is highly disciplined SDLC model in which there is a testing phase parallel to each development phase. The V model is an extension of waterfall model in which testing is done on each stage parallel with development in a sequential way. Let me explain this to you. So the major issue, I know there are many issues with waterfall, but the major issue with waterfall was that development was done first and then the testing was being done. But VV model tried to fix that. They said, okay, let's do this thing. For every development phase, we will do simultaneous, parallel testing phase, so that it's easy to fix the issue. And then it's not like we develop the complete software and then somebody's testing it. Let's do this thing. We'll do simultaneous testing, parallel testing. So this model works in that way. I'll show you the picture. You all are aware with these phases. So these are my SDLC phases. A requirement analysis, guys, I just, clubbed it together. I know the requirement gathering and analysis was two different phases. I just clubbed them together. So it become requirement analysis. Then we have design phase. In design also, you have two, documents that produce there. That is HLD, high level design, and detailed design means LLD. So LLD, and then we have coding or implementation or development. Any name you can give to it. There are different names to the same thing. So this is my verification process. That means requirement analysis, which document you will get after requirement analysis? BRD. High level design, HLD. Low level design, LLD. Implementation is your code. So whenever developer was developing a code, he said, okay, let's test it. So for LLD, there was a unit testing. So unit testing is testing individual module. And what is LLD? Design of an individual module. So whenever one module was developed, it was tested with respect to LLD. And then 2 modules, 3 modules grouped together, and they did integration testing with respect to HLD. What is HLD? It's how one module is communicating with other. So it's just like integration testing. So in order to validate it, in order to validate it, we used to do integration testing. And what we get in requirement analysis? BRD. So in order to validate that, it's an entire systems testing. So system testing. For each verification phase, we have validation phase, so that we don't mess up into this particular point that, the software is already developed and now we start with testing. No, one module is developed, we will do the unit testing. We'll group it together, do the integration testing. Group it together, we'll do the system testing. So it solved most of the things, but yes, the issue of accommodating the changes and all was still there. So that's why this was also not that successful model, but yes, it was better version of waterfall methodology. Next methodology, which is very, very popular methodology, that is Agile methodology. And that we will be learning in detail in the next video. Thank you.